Good morning and welcome. We're going to get started here. And before we do, I'll ask Senator Avard, who's already standing, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we are going to get started here. I'll take a motion to go into executive session. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And we're going to I'm going to use this time more for discussion on 1772, and I've asked Dr. Ballard to come in and explain some of the things behind it. Him and I have spoken a couple of times on this. But Dr. Ballard, thank you for coming in. If you want to step on up. And the bill is 1772 relative to the state's participation in a multi-state consortium. This is as introduced. Let me find out as amended here because it did change. No, I guess I don't have the version as amended. Oh, here we go. So I changed the title to relative to prescribing Ibogaine for investigational use only. And I think, Dr. Ballard, one of the things that we heard from in testimony in opposition of the bill, in speaking to you, and I wanted you to come to the committee and kind of tell the committee what you told me, is this isn't going to allow optometrists to be prescribing Ibogaine. We won't be seeing Ibogaine in pharmacies or dispensaries or anything like that. You won't be seeing it in an emergency room where there's no follow-up. So I just wanted to let you talk now and explain really what what this would really do.
For the record, my name is Jonathan Ballard. I work as the Chief Medical Officer of the New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services. Chairman Rochford, thank you for this opportunity. The department had serious concerns about the original underlying legislation for concerns for how to actually implement it, for funding of it. And this amended language does a few things. It clarifies that in New Hampshire, the state's licensing board would not have a role in the oversight or of the banning of research on this particular substance. So Ibogaine is a Schedule I drug that is regulated by the Federal Drug Enforcement Agency, meaning that it has no sell or allowance for possession of it. That does not mean, though, that it cannot be used for research. And the National Institutes for Drug Addiction, NIDA, the NIH, does oversee a process for research on Scheduled I drugs. They work closely with the DEA and allow for that permission. NIDA also has two facilities, one at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore and one at the University of Mississippi that actually, under their auspices and with the conjunction with the DEA, creates these types of controlled medications that would be used for research purposes. So anything that the state does as far as allowing for prescribing or dispensing for a Schedule I drug still does not allow it to be done without the DEA approval and in research purposes without really the conjunction of approval of the National Institutes for Health. So what this legislation does is it makes it clear to potential researchers that in New Hampshire, you can conduct this research, and you really just need to focus on your approvals with the federal government, that it's not the state government is not involved in this. I just want to clarify that the Department of Health and Human Services takes no position on this amended language. I'm testifying for informational only purposes.
Thank you. And I just want, you're a physician, obviously, and you have a DEA permit or license to and if you could just explain to me, if this were to pass, again, you, as it stands today, I imagine, unless you've got a Schedule 1 waiver on there, I don't think you probably do, but you wouldn't be able to utilize or prescribe this. What would the steps what would you have to go through, and any other physician in this state or researcher in this state have to go through in order to even handle, use, prescribe, study, any of that stuff to get to that point where patients are actually getting this?
Thank you for that question. First step is I have to think carefully about a research protocol. I have to think about the protection of human subjects and animal subjects or whoever may be using this substance for research purposes. Next, I would then have to apply for Institutional Research Board authorization, an IRB. In New Hampshire, University of New Hampshire, Dartmouth College are two typical institutions that could potentially do research on a substance like this. Probably more Dartmouth College, given the type of biomedical research that this is. And once approval by the Institutional Research Investigational Research Board, then I would apply to the National Institutes of Health for working with them. They actually do have a team that does work with researchers pretty closely and shepherds them through that process. Then once you're at that step, and then apply with the DEA for that permission. Once that happened, then you would work closely with those two institutions to secure the product legally and then transport it, store it, have all those protocols in place, and then start your actual research investigation protocol.
You have to find the drug somewhere, right? The substance.
And that's why I referenced that you're probably going to be working very closely with NIDA to procure it, because they could manufacture it legally.
Right. So some of the other substances that are Schedule 1 are things like heroin, LSD, psilocybin, methamphetamine. And one of the questions I had asked you is, are there any current studies going on either in New Hampshire or elsewhere that are researching Schedule 1 substances for investigational purposes?
Yes, absolutely there are. You listed several of them. There are, in New Hampshire, I did not identify any currently. I know that there are a few researchers at Dartmouth College I spoke with who are interested in research on Schedule 1 drugs, potential medications, but not for ibogaine. No, ibogaine, is derived from the iboga root. It's native to 3 African countries. I would presume then that would have to procure the original source substance and then actually manufacture the medication from the root itself.
Great. And then my last question, and the original bill was rooted, and I think it was RSA 126 or 129. The amended version moves it over to 329, which is under OPLC. And again, as you explained to me, what this does is essentially gives anybody who wants to go through all of those processes, any physician that wants to jump through all those hoops to, do this in New Hampshire, this essentially tells OPLC that they can't sanction their license to do this, but there's still many more barriers to entry and regulatory hurdles they have to comply with.
Yes, Chairman, that is correct. It essentially says that of all of those regulatory hurdles that you do have to comply with to do this research legally, the state is not adding additional regulation and red tape to that already extensive process.
Great. Thank you. I'm going to open it up to the committee if they've got any questions at this point.
Yeah.
Senator Long.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Doctor. So House Bill 1772 refers to ibogaine only. Does NIDA have data? Can I go to NIDA and get data on what they're currently investigational use only? Would they have a list of that?
I cannot say for certain, Senator, but I believe so. I believe that could be obtained from NIDA. They do. I did look on clinicaltrials.gov, and I looked for clinical current ongoing human subject research on Scheduled I drugs, and I did see a few of them there. So, that is a comprehensive listing of all research that is funded by the federal government, and that would be one way to find it.
Good, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions in the committee? Do have one last question, then we'll let you get on with your day. So there's a big difference between investigational and available for sale. So just because you investigate something doesn't mean that it's safe or appropriate or ready to be sold or used in a clinical setting. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. There's a very big difference between, for example, something that's for investigational use only. I don't know of a way that you could obtain it or prescribe it and get it through a pharmacy. It would be through a special research protocol.
Very much. So thank you for coming in. I appreciate it. And this has been very valuable.
Yes, sir.
All right. Very good. So is there any other discussion? We're still in executive session. We have 4 minutes. I'm not prepared to exec anything today, but if there's anything we want to talk about, we can do that now. All right, well, I'll take a motion to come out of executive session.
Second.
And I got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
All right,
Opposed? All right, and we'll be in recess for 3 minutes. All right, we are going to come out of recess and we are going to open the hearing on House Bill 1337, repealing the New Hampshire Council on Autism Spectrum Disorders. The prime sponsor called me. He is not available to make it. He got the notification late, so I will introduce House Bill 1337. This bill repeals the New Hampshire Council on Autism and Spectrum Disorders. So we will call Representative Stringham.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. It was pleasant seeing you pass me on the highway on the way down here today.
Well, I wasn't going that fast. I was on time today, so I know I wasn't going that fast.
I'm Representative Jerry Stringham. I represent Grafton 3, which is Lincoln, Woodstock, and Easton. Here to speak against House Bill 1337. This bill follows a bill on the same subject last year, since it wasn't really introduced. It's about the Council of Autism Spectrum Disorders. They came to the legislature, that group, seeking help because during COVID, the group had largely ceased to function properly, and we're asking for a positive amendment to make it possible for them to have meetings with quorums and make other reasonable changes. The House then started to look at disbanding the group itself, despite the fact that the group serving this very vulnerable population were looking for help. The bill came over here basically like this one, which is repealing this council. The Senate chose to amend the bill back to the original House bill that I had put in on behalf of this group, and we did not reach consensus, and that bill died. So this bill showed up again this year. It wasn't significantly debated on the floor. It was part of the hundreds of bills that went through in the final 2 days of the first part of the House session. I'm here to say that this committee or this council has been reconstituted. A year ago when we were talking, it was largely just trying to get back in fully functioning. If you go now, you'll see plenty of meeting minutes. The annual report for the first time in several years has been filed. It was accepted by the governor. The governor has now filled 6 of the vacancies. I think that's the right count, so that it's much more possible and normal for the group to meet their quorum responsibilities. Literally just doing a search on this, you'll find these kind of documentation. This is obviously an important topic for families with affected or with autism. I listened to all the testimony, and even those that were concerned that nothing happened during COVID and post-COVID period agreed that this council addresses a patient population that is not addressed by any other type of similar function, and that there would be a vacancy that would have to be filled somehow. So, and again, there's no appropriation to keeping this group in, it would behoove us to either ITL this bill, or perhaps if the council still wanted it, to amend it back to the way we had it last year. But just ITLing it would be, at least the organization is fully functioning now and serving our autistic community. So with that, to answer any questions that you may have.
Sure. Thank you, Representative. And I was looking for the annual report. I could not track it down ahead of this. That could be my ability to navigate some of these things. But I know the original legislation had highlighted a number of objectives, 6 or 7 things that this group needs to work on, is compelled by legislation to work on. How many of those have come forth, And what kind of legislation has been enacted or even proposed as a result of the work of the council?
There has been some work done, promoted by the council, I think called the Blue Envelope Law.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty important. It's I'm not maybe the best person to talk to it, but my understanding is for people that are autistic who have an interaction with police or other emergency personnel, sometimes their kind of response to things might be a little bit different. The presence of a blue envelope with instructions in it is somewhat helpful to make that a quality interaction. So that was something that this council promoted and I believe became law and is now enacted. So I hate to think how something like that wouldn't happen, especially with a group like this that is doing this work with 25 members for free.
So it sounds like there's maybe been some renewed energy around the council, as if I took that away from your testimony correctly.
I think it's already happened.
Okay.
Yeah. And
When do you-
I have read the annual report and I did pull it offline.
Okay.
Online. So
And it sounds like some positions are being filled and things are kind of being, getting back on track. When do you expect things to really kind of be running on all cylinders?
I think they're pretty darn close right now. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the appointment of six by the governor, I don't know why it took so long to fill so many of the vacancies, but that's occurred in the last couple of months. So.
Okay, very good. Senator Avard has a question.
Just, yeah, one question, but I'm glad you brought up the blue envelope. That was a product of their work and it allows, I believe, law enforcement to know how to handle a situation. That's when coming into contact with somebody who might be autistic. But my question has to do with the majority report. There was one statement that said that it operates with limited transparency and it oversteps its statutory authority. Do you have any comments on that, on how they came to that conclusion?
You know, I think there's a couple of people that listen into some of the committees that had concerns about it. I listened to the hour testimony in there, and I haven't seen any evidence of that. And I know the people at the senior leadership aren't doing it for the money; they're doing it like we do it. So, I don't see any self-enrichment or a lack of transparency. All the minutes are online. You can see when the minutes are going to be. They're on Facebook. The annual report does talk about an open session that they had where taking criticism and feedback and what can we do better and that kind of thing. So I think it's a good, solid process. So thank you for asking.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No, see none. Thank you, Representative. And I'll watch for your license plate next time I'm headed south. Let you lead the way. Chair calls Amy Rayom. Oh, can you put your microphone on there so we can hear you? Thank you.
There we go. Am I on TV today?
You are.
Oh, wonderful. Been trying to write my testimony while being emotional. Been working on that for the last few days.
We'd rather have you be emotional
Yeah.
and speak to us from the heart than read
Okay.
off a piece of paper.
Great. Okay, then thank you for the permission. My name is Amy Rayum. I live in Derry, New Hampshire. I'm a little starstruck. I actually get to see Mrs. Birdsell face to face. So nice to meet you. I'm one of your constituents. So first of all, I'm a parent, okay? One of my sons is 20 and he is on the autism spectrum. And he is light and joy and we're just working on different skills right now. Like we're practicing driving. And so I'm so excited about the Blue Envelope program because when we drive together, we drove to Manchester the other day and we saw 3 police officers and he's like all tense. And I was like, Kevin, it's okay. Don't worry about it. If we get pulled over, we're going to talk about this so that, you know, when he does get his license, which he will, he has memorized the DMV manual. He'll be able to have that envelope, which will show the police officers that this child, he's an adult, he's 6 feet tall, is very nervous, and he just wants to do the right thing. Secondly, I have worked in the field of applied behavior analysis for 25 years. I guess that makes me older. I work with students with severe autism every day, day in and day out. So in my entirety, until just this last month, I have never been able to point my parents that I work with, family members, to a place to get resources. I'm so excited that now if you go to NH, for those of you on laptops or phones right now, nhautismcouncil.org, there's some hamburger lines there, I think that's what they're called, and you can click on resources. So my son has had autism for 16 years, or he was diagnosed 16 years ago. And I've had to search far and wide to get resources for my son. And there's a lot of people in this state that have resources, but there's never been one place to go to. You know, if you think about it, if you had some condition that altered your life 24/7, and you needed to go to a Facebook page, you know what I mean? Like there's cancer societies, there's MS societies, you know? So I'm just so proud of the work that the New Hampshire Autism Council has done over the last couple of years. Going to try and stay straight here. Oh, also, I'm finally a member. I got my letter from Governor Ayotte a month ago. So I'm also a member of the New Hampshire Autism Council. I used to attend the meetings before COVID. They were quarterly. And I really always felt like the people there were just there because they held a position and they weren't exactly passionate, you know, about making changes and providing for people with autism or their families in New Hampshire. Over the past 2 years, I've attended in person when possible, if not online. And there's people here today that I feel like their goal is to give people that central place to go. They need a place to go. I need to be able to tell parents, go to this website. You're going to find places for therapies, for support groups, for sensory places for your child to go where they will be accepted and loved. Let's see. Did I say we're tired yet? I'm tired. We're all very tired. But we will do whatever it takes. And because we're so tired, we need a place that we can go that's easy and accessible. And right now, that is the New Hampshire Autism Council website. So I'm on the committee as well, and our goal is to continue to provide an efficient place. So let's see. I'm not sure if you guys know the stats. So when my son was diagnosed 16 years ago, it was 1 in 150. 1 in 150 children have autism. Right now, it's 1 in 31. That is 4% of people in New Hampshire. I wanted to talk a little bit about Derry. My son has an amazing program in the Derry School District. He has what's called an out-of-district program contracted in. He's actually at Pinkerton. It's through the New England Center for Children. So the amount of classes, I figured out the average is there are 60 children with level 3 autism, which is severe autism, just in Derry alone. So it's my neighbors, my friends, my family members, close neighbors, that I know that they deal with the things that come along with autism, and that is sleep issues, GI issues, medication issues. We have to wait for diagnoses. And so all that to say, we need a place that they can go to that's easy. Somebody else will speak to the objectives. So I just wanted to say, I don't know why this went through the House, the repeal of this council, but you have an opportunity to not make life harder for what is already difficult. So I would appreciate you, whatever you do, ITL, kill the bill, whatever it means, you know, in your language, please.
So obviously, there are some folks that disagree with you, right?
For some
so-
reason, there's a couple of parents that disagree.
So let me ask you this, as someone who's utilized this program, not only as a parent, but professionally, where does it fall short? Why would anyone criticize the work of what you gave us some fantastic examples of how it helps in the community. Where does it fall short? Why would somebody criticize that? What would there be objection to this program be?
I guess the only thing I could say is maybe they're seeking perfection immediately, and we're a work in progress. We're people with autism on the council, or autistic people, depending on how they like to be referred. We're parents, and we're just doing our best to find ways to meet and make it better. Each month, more people come. Each month, we have a higher level of quorum. We now have subcommittees. We've, developed the resources, the partnership with the Blue Envelope program. There's people coming to speak about the Medicaid changes at our meeting next Friday so that we can have understanding and share with our communities. Like, this is a big deal, So I would say I don't know this person that's trying to stop this, but we're making progress month by month, and I want it to continue.
And then my last question is, do you think that the fact that the threat is looming, do you think that's a motivating factor to get the commission and council up, moving even quicker,
Not
more
at all,
cohesively?
not at all.
You don't? Okay.
The threat is looming. I'm sorry, could you
Yeah,
rephrase
they're
that?
threatened with canceling the commission.
Yeah,
So knowing that,
Yeah.
if knowing that there are people in this legislature that want to wipe this out, do you think that, if we were to keep this thing going, we were to kill the bill as you requested?
Yeah.
Do you think that would be a motivating factor for the council members to maybe, communicate better, provide more, resources to prove their worth?
no, we're already doing everything we can.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
In my parent perspective.
Yep, thank you. Senator Birdsell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for taking my question.
Mhm.
No need to be in awe.
What's that?
I said no need to be in
Well, I've
awe.
only seen you on TV, and I was like, oh, I get to actually meet my senator.
Can you walk through a little bit? I've heard about the Blue Envelope program. How does it work?
It's something, other states have done it. It's something you carry around with you. So say you were in an emergency, or the classic is you get pulled over. And so having that blue envelope, it just says on there that I have autism. I might struggle with communicating. I'm not on that committee, so there's probably more details later. But it's just a way for a physical, tangible object. So like my son is going to be able to hand it to them. Police officers across the nation are already familiar with blue envelopes, okay? But it's going to say like specific information, like I may need more time to communicate. I may be nervous like I am right now. And that I need your grace while having this discussion.
Okay, so it basically gives the police a heads up.
Yep.
Okay,
Because they might not be able to communicate that, because autism is a communication disorder.
great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Chair calls Virginia Cannon.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Virginia Cannon. I live in Concord. I am a adult with autism, so I hope you'll have a little grace. This is very, very nerve-wracking. I'm on the committee, or the council. I joined because my daughter has autism as well, and she is more significantly impacted than I am. I can only speak for myself. I don't speak for the council on this. We haven't had a meeting and said, oh, well, so-and-so should go and testify and say this. So I'm only speaking on my own behalf, but I'm tired. I'm tired of fighting for a seat at the table. I'm not asking for a piece of the pie. I'm just asking to sit at the table and have concerns be listened to and have a space where parents and professionals can come together and try and make things easier for people. I was also on the Blue Envelope Committee, so I'm happy to address that if the senators have questions. The Autism Council really, really tanked. I don't want to throw our former leadership under the bus, but they just disappeared. They simply disappeared. No one was calling meetings because they were the people that were charged with calling the meetings, and they didn't. They just disappeared. And so we had to scrape together from the ashes of that people that were willing, and we're all volunteers. None of us get paid for this. We all volunteer out of our professional lives or out of our personal lives to come and do the best we can with what we have. And what we have is a very limited budget that provides for administrative assistance so that we can comply with 91A. That's what we have. Everything else is done by volunteers on their own time because they care. We keep coming back to, they want to get, that there is a very vocal, very angry group that wants to get rid of us. My personal opinion is because we don't provide direct services to them. But that's not the point of the council. That may be the point of an ABA center, that may be a point of their therapist, that may be a point of the mental health system, but the council is not there to provide direct support to families, but not services. I don't understand the drive to get rid of us. This person, as far as I know, and I've been on the council from pre-COVID times, has not applied to be on the council, to be a member, to try and change the direction if that's what they think is important. It's just been, get rid of it, get rid of it, get rid of it. I don't understand. But the council has reconvened. We've risen from the ashes. We've got leadership. The leadership is, I don't want to speak for leadership, some of is here, but I think they're tired too. They've been looking for people with autism to take over the leadership. I will tell you, I can't do it. My anxiety, there's no way. There's no way I could be the forward-facing face of this group. After 60 years, I'm aware of what my limitations are, and that's one of them. But they want to turn this over to the autism community to run. But we have to find those people. We have to raise them up. We have to give them the support that they need to do that. We've come back together. We're meeting quorum. We're following our 91As. We're doing our reports. We're putting together the resources. We're doing everything we can possibly do at this point. But some of the charge that we've been given in the legislature is more than a volunteer group with no funds can do. I mean, that's the other piece. One of the, we're supposed to be writing grants to get money. Well, none of us are a grant writer, and none of us can write grants in our spare time. That's a huge undertaking. I don't even think we could cobble together the money from the administrative support for somebody to go attend a seminar to learn how to write grants. But somehow we're supposed to be writing grants to get money to do things. I don't know. I think the council does really good work within the limitations of remembering that this is a 100% volunteer community with admin support. And so, we do have people to come and talk to us. We do have communication between high-level members of HHS and support networks and area agencies and special education. And that's where we're supposed to be talking so that people can take information from one silo to another, and then it can come trickle down, which was, I think, part of the point of putting together the committee in the first place, is because everything was so siloed. But I don't know.
Thank you very much. You touched on this a couple of times. I just want to clarify this, and I will confirm it. This council is for administrative assistance?
No, I'm
Okay.
sorry?
You said the council has 4 administrative assistants.
No, the council has funding for administrative support
Funding,
to
okay.
comply with 91A.
Okay, so
I'm
maybe
sorry if I
maybe I
misspoke.
got 4 and funding mixed up. All right.
Yeah, no, we have.
We have
funding-
we have one assistant here.
Oh, yeah, no, we have funding for one administrative assistant
Okay,
so
one,
that we
so
can
you have funding
comply
for
with
one,
91A.
so you have so administrative assistant, is that their full-time job, is to be?
No.
Okay, all right, probably
No.
shared amongst other, okay,
Yes.
all right, that's it. I'm glad I clarified that, because sometimes
I'm sorry if I misspoke.
too
This
much
this is
loud
very
music in
nervous.
the 80s probably is, we can blame that. Are there any questions from the committee? Senator Prentice?
Thank you, Chair Rochford, and thank you, Georgina.
Yes,
Thank you for taking my question. So you are on the council now.
yes, ma'am.
Okay, Paul,
Yes.
how long have you been on the council?
I believe I joined in, well, I don't actually remember. The council specifically requested that the legislature that created us change to allow for a member of, who was on the spectrum as appointed by the council. And that was me, because I was saying, hey, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And they said, well, why don't you join? Well, there was no place for me to join, because at that time, all of the slots were filled by professionals, except for one. So the slots are, for example, like the governor or her designee, the head of DHHS or her designee. Those were all professional positions. And then we had one member who was a member with autism, appointed by the governor, and we had one spot that was open for a parent of someone with autism. And they were the only two people with lived experience that were on that committee at that time. So they changed it to bring in someone else.
Yes.
Thank you, and thanks, Regina. So it seems to me that you have, as I hear you speak, that you have real operational knowledge of what has happened and has been happening.
I have
But-
some, I'm not sure I have the
Well,
inside scoop, but
You have some lived experience with this. So my question for you, based on this, is in the and this was referenced earlier, I believe, by Senator Avard, speaking with another person who came up to testify about the report that came out of the House, and it speaks to it. It has a statement here that says that this group may have has overstepped its statutory authority. Do you?
I haven't seen the report. Can you tell me some context? I don't,
Well, that's the context I'm looking.
oh,
May I?
Yes.
Yes, that's the context I'm actually looking for. Is I don't know either, but it's it just talks about limited transparency, which I think the transparency issue has been clearly addressed, but may have overstepped its authority. It didn't says may, it says has. Yes. It's the minority report.
That's the
I think it
majority
ought to
report.
pass. Majority ought to pass, minority inexpedient to legislate. It's just something that was in, and I'm happy, it's not,
I'm
it's
afraid
not a
I
report from the commission.
I
It
don't,
was a statement that was made, and so I'm trying to
yeah,
just
I
get
don't
some
know,
context.
but I can address the one about transparency because I was peripherally involved in that. Someone had made a 91A request for information, and they received, one of the pages they received back was almost completely redacted. And they were very upset about that. And that's because it was a person's resume who had applied for the position of the part-time administrative assistant. And so it was redacted under personnel records, but the person who requested it was very upset that it was redacted. And so I do know, I mean, I tried to explain that to her, that there's a personnel exception and, that's not, it's not appropriate information to be out there. But she wasn't particularly amenable to hearing an explanation, so.
Great. Thank you so much for taking my questions.
And
Really-
thank you for
really appreciate
asking them. Are there any other questions I can answer?
Let me ask that question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't know how this works.
Senator
I'm just-
Burns, you're fine. You're fine.
Thank you for taking my question. So you had said prior that there were only one or two that had served that had autism. Are there how many now serve that have autism or have family members who are autistic?
All of the 6 new members, because we were able to, 3 or 4 years ago, we were able to get legislation through that created those positions
Okay.
in the legislation that creates us. And then we established a procedure and a committee to receive applications and vet people and, ask questions and then make recommendations for the governor's appointment. So I believe all of the new appointees are either people on the spectrum or family members.
Thank you.
All right, are there any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chair calls Marissa Berg.
Right. So thank you, Chairman Rochefort and other members of the committee. I actually was able to drop off, and I hope that it made its way to you all. This past Friday, I dropped off paper printed copies of the 2025 annual report, which is, for us, it's our fiscal year 2025. So it runs from July 1st, 24 to July 1st, 25. So it does give you a picture of what has happened long past, well before this legislation was filed. So you do have copies of that. You also have copies of that annual report in the materials I just gave you. You also have copies of our agendas for the past, the current fiscal year, as well as a list of our membership, our current membership. So just as a quick fact, we do have 21 current seated members. Much of that is, like you heard earlier testimony, much of that is people who were just approved by the governor back in February, which we really appreciate. That leaves 2 empty seats. One of those is the governor or a designee, and a representative of the New Hampshire Medical Society. So those are our only 2 empty seats at this juncture. So I don't want to recap everything that's in the written testimony that you have in front of you. It does contain some just different facts about the Autism Council, some things that we have been doing. Much of what I was going to share has already been shared by Amy and Gina, which I appreciate. We have 5 of those, like was mentioned, or 6 of them that were mentioned were people who have autism and their family members that were just seated. That's in addition to other members who do have autism, and that's all outlined in our membership in the materials. We've already talked a little bit about the blue envelope law, some of the info sessions that we've had for members over the past, say, year and a half. We had an information session on assistive technology, accessing assistive technology through UNH, information on the Parent Information Center and what the Information Center does. And then this coming Friday, we also have, or next Friday, like it was mentioned, we have somebody from the Bureau of Family Assistance coming to talk a little bit about their changes in eligibility process, as well as somebody from a community mental health center talking about the supports that they offer people with autism within their own center. So we're really trying to bring a diverse set of information to folks and enabling them to be able to access the things that they need, sharing best practices. And we're basing a lot of that information on things that were feedback that was provided to us during a feedback. We had a couple feedback sessions in November of 24 when we were really trying to step things up. The outcomes of that are also included in our annual report from fiscal year 25. So we're really basing some of our, how we build our agendas off of what is it that the community is looking for, what sorts of information. I think it's also important to note that the Autism Council is the only entity that supports people whether or not they access Medicaid home and community-based care waiver services. So this is not something that is duplicated in the Autism Council, which is just for Medicaid-funded services. This is for anybody who has autism. So this is also a council that is intended to support those individuals who may be transferring out of high school and don't qualify for Medicaid, but they do need some additional supports and access and knowing where to go. So that is part of the resources that we offer on our website. I do have the actual website itself is on your written information. We do have everything is transparent. We have actually talked a couple times with a member of the State Attorney General's office just to be sure we are in compliance with 91A, and she has confirmed that yes, you know, that we, from what she sees, that, you know, she didn't have any concerns that were noted. So, you know, as far as transparency, everything is on our website. It always has been. So, you know, I hope that folks are able to find our website. I mean, I'm not sure how else to do it. So, you know, I wanted to just make sure that you had as much information as possible going forward. So I am open to any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Marissa. So, you know, we sit on, as senators, I think I'm on 10, 12, 13 different commissions, councils, committees,
Yeah.
and some are excellent. Most are excellent. Some don't need to exist anymore. And we just keep kicking the ball down the road. It sounds like perhaps this council has languished in the past, maybe recent past. It sounds like there's been some apathy on there, but according to what you say, there's some new energy coming out.
Yes.
Do you think, and there has been some criticism that, so we're hearing through the grapevine, nobody has come up today and said, there's a problem here. We're kind of reading it, you know, reading through the notes we're getting. So, you know, would you say that the current scrutiny that the council is under will be a motivating factor for the new energy to really step up their game and ensure that they're achieving the objectives that are laid out in statute?
I mean, it's hard to say. I can say, you know, it's where we sit today.
I'm trying to help you here.
Yeah. I appreciate it. I think a combination of, we have a whole set of new faces who are very motivated to make sure that this council is working for people with autism and their families, you know, from now on.
So the second part of my question is, if we were to sunset this council, not today, not pass the bill, but sunset it in the future, do you think that would be the charge of energy that we want?
There was some discussion, I think, at the last, Representative Stringham mentioned that their last session, there was some discussion about that, about seeing, you know, giving this council time to re-energize and really start building out the structure that was needed. And I do, you know, the council members have really taken that to heart and have really been working very hard. You know, it's been mentioned, we have subcommittees now. We have almost a full roster for our membership now. You know, and at the time that this first bill came out, that wasn't the case. So I do think that this is a re-energized council. It is a council that has robust participation at this point. You know, we have the members that we need and who are really dedicated to this population because they have a vested interest. They're family members, they're people with autism who see the struggles in a way that, you know, it's a lived experience for them. And so they are seeing what they need in order to exist in the world and what supports that they don't have otherwise.
Great. Thank you. Are there any, Senator Avard has a question.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. So we heard in one of the previous testimonies that there was a time where it was one out of every 135, and now it's one out of every 30. That would seem that there's a massive increase in the population, 4% according to what was being said. So that there in itself should light a fire under somebody, right? I mean, what is the cause? Is there a cause, or is it linked to anything? But as far as services, on the average family that has to deal with this situation, what is the cost for them and what the cost of the state in services to them?
I don't know that I could even
Does the
answer
commission
that, yeah.
deal with topics like that on how to,
So right now, our focus is really on the gaps in services. So what are the things that people with autism need that they can't access? So some of it might be data. Some of it might be we just don't have this particular service, or families don't know where to turn to access services. So part of it is communication. So we could certainly, I'm not sure that it's completely outlined that way in our legislation, but it could certainly be, there's nothing ruling discussions like that out of what is the cost of supporting somebody moving forward.
all right, thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Senator Long.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your testimony. I just saw the other two women that testified were more on resources that this council could offer. Do you see that as the purpose of this council, offering resources, or do you see the potential of some services?
Thank you for the question. And we do not have the bandwidth, nor is it in our RSA that the purpose of the council is to provide direct services. It's intended to be a resource, almost clearinghouse for resources, and to provide information to families and people with autism on accessing services in their communities.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chair calls Karen Blake. That is the last person I have signed up to speak.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Rochford and members of the Senate Health and Human Services Committee. My name is Karen Blake, and I live in North Woodstock, New Hampshire. Full disclosure, I am also the Director of Community Partnerships for Community Crossroads. I am also a seated member of the Quality Council under Family Support, and I'm the co-chair of Northern Human Services Family Support Council. Not speaking on behalf of any of those people today, I'm only speaking on behalf of myself, my family, and my son. My son experiences autism. He has given me permission today to speak on his behalf. He is currently in New London, Connecticut at a specialized program for post-secondary education called the Thames Program at Mitchell College. There is not currently any post-secondary support in the state of New Hampshire. So we are grateful that there are other states that have that, and that we're looking, to hopefully get that, but that's for another day. Autism Council. This April, I'm sure you're all aware, is Autism Acceptance Month. It is unfortunate that we are here again looking to have the Autism Council repealed. For those of us who have a loved one who experiences autism, the council at different points has been a light, somewhere that we can go to get specific information about autism. The COVID years were a little bumpy, not gonna lie. I am not currently a member of the Autism Council because it's requirement to be in person. I cannot always be in person, but it is open to the public and it is online. So even if I can't be a member, I do participate as much as I can on behalf of my son and our family. I don't think this is the right time. I understand that there's a lot of councils, but I don't think this is the right time to repeal the Autism Council. If if one of the things that we know is that with long-term supports and services, there is a very high incidence of people who experience at least autism who are seeking long-term supports and services. But that doesn't tell the whole story. Those are only the people that meet the high bar, like my loved one, to qualify for long-term supports and services. There are a whole lot of people in this state who experience autism that are not covered by that. And if they're not covered by that, they're not covered by the Quality Council, the Developmental Disability Quality Council. We really need this council for everybody who's on the spectrum. And remember, the spectrum isn't linear. It's more of a Venn diagram, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's been there for us, and I've noticed, even just attending the meetings, the input, the participation, they've worked really, really hard to be a part of it. And, and it's not just members of the council, when the Autism Council was working with the Department of Transportation on the Blue Envelope, I was one of the members who was giving input. It is likely that my loved one is going to drive at some point. And, having that blue envelope is going to be really important. And the Department of Transportation learned from the Autism Council, as well as from all of us, some of the things to look for, some of the things to put on that blue envelope, so that it would make it easier for the police to interact appropriately with that individual, that driver. So I'm asking again for this committee and for the Senate to please oppose HB 1337 and let the Autism Council continue to evolve and to grow, so that we can really be there and have this council there for everyone who experiences autism in this state, but also their families, their friends, and the professionals, so that there is one place to go to find out the pertinent information.
Thank you. Are there questions from the committee?
Just one, if I may.
Sure.
So the blue envelope, is that for all first responders?
The blue envelope is it is an optional program for somebody that, who is a driver who experiences autism, to have that. And it's a really great envelope. On the back of it is, how to interact with the individual, but inside it is your registration, maybe a copy of your license. So it makes it a lot less nerve-wracking, because it's nerve-wracking for all of us. But that they have all that information.
One more follow-up.
Yep. Sure.
I did promise this to be my last. So sounds like a great idea. Are there any other ideas like the blue envelope that are in the pipeline that you can talk about?
I do not know that.
Okay.
I do not know that, Senator.
Thank you.
And the only other quick question, quick thing, just in case nobody else said it, the admin is a part-time position and it's shared with the Quality Council. So I just wanted to make sure that that was understood.
Thank you.
All right.
Now, I just have a quick question. So
Sure.
there's 23 members on this council, which is huge. I mean, that's a big problem. And I think, having served on some councils that are not as effective as others, I think the larger it is, the less efficacy you get out of the council. So I'm just wondering your thoughts on, A, is the council too big? And B, it's tasked with 7 clear objectives in statute on what it should do. Is the scope too large?
That is an excellent question. Thank you for that question. I do want to say that the size of the council is not as much as an issue. The Quality Council is equally as large. And I feel that there does need to be the perspectives. Some of the newer members are helping that balance of life experience. When this council was enacted, we didn't know a whole lot about autism. This council was enacted a year before my son was born. He's now 19. And I think that having that input is going to help significantly. But as you've heard, some of the members have only just been seated. So I think it's a little too soon to say if the council is too big. One of the things that we had originally tried to do with Representative Stringham's bill last year, before it was amended to repeal the council, was to address the scope as well as membership and to make it easier for people who experience disability to participate in the Autism Council. Currently, the Quality Council allows for individuals who experience disability as well as family members who are caring for someone with a disability to be a part of the council, meet quorum, even though they're remote, if they are remote because of a disability. And that was one of the things that Representative Stringham had in the original bill to make it easier for people who experience autism to participate. It's a big state. You and I are in the north, so it takes a little bit to get here. And if all of the council meetings are in Concord, we're not necessarily having individuals from the entire state being able to participate. So I don't know if that answers your question,
Yeah,
but
that's helpful.
yeah.
Some of us get here quicker than others, apparently. So, yes, Senator Birdsall.
Just one quick question. Do you have trouble getting a quorum, or do you consistently have a quorum?
Thank you for the question. Again, I'm not a seated member of the Autism Council, but I do know that, they don't run the meeting if they don't have quorum. And I believe that's correct. Okay, that is correct. And more often than not, I am able to attend monthly, at least for part of it.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Thank you for coming down. If there's anyone else like to speak on House Bill 1337, I'm going to close the hearing. All right, I'm going to open the hearing on House Bill 1378 relative to parental access to a minor child's electronic medical records. Is the prime sponsor here to introduce the bill, Representative Litchfield? She is not. So I will introduce the bill relative to parental access to minor child's electronic medical records. So with that, we've got a number of speakers and we've got a number of senators that have to get to Granite Place today throughout the day. So we will be putting a timer on for 3 minutes for today's testimony. And with that, I will call Ben Bradley.
Good morning, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Ben Bradley. I represent the New Hampshire Hospital Association, which is made up of all 26 of the state's community hospitals and all specialty hospitals. Thanks for the opportunity to testify this morning. We strongly support parents' rights to access their minors' medical records and fully appreciate the important role that they play in providing and coordinating medical care for their children. However, this bill has several unintended consequences and makes false presumptions that I want to make sure I clear up. First, parents already have access to their minors' medical records. Providers, including hospitals, are required to issue an electronic or hard copy of a patient's medical record upon their request under RSA 332I:1. This bill presumes parents do not currently have access to electronic records, which is not the case. Second, this bill defines the medical record as inclusive of records available via online patient portals. This is problematic because the patient portal should not be considered an official medical record, and I believe in legal lawsuits, legal cases, it's not considered an official medical record. Patient portals are a software tool that allow patients to interact with their care, send messages to their providers, get lab and imaging, other diagnostic results in a timely manner, schedule appointments, etc. And a patient portal and medical record are separate and distinct, and I want to make sure that's clear. Here's why that's important, is because federal and state laws and regulations contain certain confidentiality protections for adolescents' health information. Some of those protections are already outlined in the bill in Section 2, which acknowledges when a minor can consent to care on their own. Examples would include for substance misuse, behavioral health, other things that have been outlined in state and federal law and regulations. These protections are intended to encourage minors to seek necessary care in a timely way. And this issue was studied at length in 2024 when the legislature established the committee to study consent and confidentiality laws applicable to adolescents and young adults healthcare in New Hampshire. I have the report here. I'm happy to provide it to the committee. The challenge we face is that certain patient portals are not capable of parsing out the protected health information of a minor from non-protected information. And with that technology limitation, some providers would not be able to comply with this statute while also protecting the health information outlined that I've outlined before. They would be forced to terminate portals if this was to pass in order to comply. And I'm happy to take questions for you.
Great, thank you, Ben. So just one thing that you said in your opening is legally, lawsuits don't consider a portal, because I guess that's what we're talking about right now. Because I mean, parents, I know as a parent, I have complete access to my child's record. I've done it. Call, get a file emailed to me, and it takes a day to do that. So I think the question we're talking about is a portal, and personally, I've kind of looked at that more as a customer service convenience factor, not necessarily as the formal medical record. It's a convenience. It's a customer service function. So I think what you said, though, which is important, and I just want to make sure I understood it, is that the court in various lawsuits would agree with me, maybe, that it's not part of the official medical record. The medical record is available, it's accessible, and the courts understand that. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the distinction I'm trying to make is that the medical record is separate and distinct from the portal, the patient portal, which is a user interface. As you pointed out, it helps you with scheduling, helps you message your provider, get testing more quickly in a timely way. But when you try to link it, when you try to suggest that the portal is an official medical record, that's where it becomes problematic, and we're not able to comply with the confidentiality requirements under existing law that protect adolescents' information and releasing an official medical record.
And I'm making an assumption here. I know it's dangerous in this world, and I assume that the reason why that is because you or a hospital has their own medical records department that is within their hospital that they control, they own, they have access to that. And a patient can get that freely, that medical record, by working directly with the hospital. But these portals are, although they're compliant with HIPAA and they're run by you're contracted with a third party. You don't own the platform that runs the portal. That's why it makes it a little harder for us to apply a standard to something that's under your own roof to a contracted service.
That's right.
I just want to make sure I understood that. Very good. Are there any other questions? Senator Birdsall.
Thank you. Did I hear you say that there is some information in the portal that the parents do not have access to? And what kind of information would parents not be able to have access to?
So, Senator, I was trying to explain, thank you for the question. What I was trying to explain is that adolescents, so minors under the age of 18, there's a certain age where they can consent to treatment, certain care for themselves, like substance misuse, behavioral health, other points of access in which the law affords them the ability to go see a provider and get care for those things without needing consent from a parent. And so, and that's where I identified the study committee that the legislature hosted a couple of years ago in 2024, which looked into those protections for minors to seek care and on their own consent, right? So, and that is in law to ensure that adolescents don't forgo or delay or be less candid when they seek medical care and their confidentiality can be protected. That being said, the portal, which may contain information about those services that have been provided under the law, is not able to parse out the protected information as the law affords from the non-protected information because of the technological incapability. And so what we're saying is, if this bill were to pass, which would require that the medical record, including records available on the patient portal, be provided to the parent, there's no way of ensuring that the protected information remains protected under federal and state law. And so hospitals that aren't able to parse out that information would likely end up shutting down access to that portal because they're not able to parse out that information.
Yes.
And I understand that. However, the parents are still responsible up until the age of 18 to pay the bills and pay the insurance.
Certainly.
Are they not going to find out anyway that they're being treated for this?
So I think if your question is about whether parents should have access to the protected health information that exists under state law, state and federal law, that respectively is a different question than what this bill is attempting to do, which is to provide access to the patient portal for a parent to access the medical records. And what I'm trying to convey to you is that there's a technology it can't parse it out in certain electronic medical record systems like the portal. And so if you're concerned about parents' access to treatment for mental health services or parents' access to medical records on substance use disorder services, that's already in state law. That's not something that this bill tries to address. And so I'd be glad to talk to you about that, walk you through the study committee that took place, looking at consent and confidentiality laws for minors and adolescents in New Hampshire. There's been a lot of work on that. And so if you'd like more information, I'm happy to provide it. But I'm trying to speak to the limitations of the portal under existing law.
So if I get that, if I get this right, and the prime sponsor is not here to tell us the background of this, but I have to assume that the purpose of this bill was to allow parents to have complete access to a child's medical record. And I had to assume that they think that by having access to the portal will do this. But as I'm hearing this, there has to be a complete rewrite of a whole bunch of other laws because they are afforded certain privacy protections in other parts of the statute. And I'm assuming, and again, I mean, I know it's there are those protections are afforded in state law. I don't know, are there federal laws that afford those protections as well? So even if we were to go rewrite everything in the state, the children are afforded certain privacy protections in federal statute as well, correct?
That's correct.
So even if we were to say, this isn't the right vehicle to do this, to achieve this goal, we're going to rewrite everything in the state law to pair up with that, we'd still be in the same situation as it relates to a portal, because there are certain things in the portal that are protected by federal law that we can't access.
Yeah, there are certain things that adolescents can consent to on their own without parental involvement. Now, we strongly encourage parental involvement. As providers, I think anybody would say it's incredibly valuable to have a parent's involvement in their child's medical care. They're a tremendous asset for the planning and making sure things are consistent. That's absolutely incredibly important, and I think providers very much encourage that. There are limitations, though. We're trying to comply with existing law and regulations that afford minors the ability to consent to care for themselves and support those so that they don't forego treatment or forego necessary care to ensure that they're healthy and can be successful.
One more follow-up, and then I'll let you, Senator Everard. So again, looking at assuming what we want is the final outcome, if you were to turn, if this became law, what you're saying is, we don't have the capability to do our portal, you turn the portal off, parents are still going to run into the same problems with their medical record because there are certain privacy aspects that are afforded under state and federal law. We're going to be right back here talking about the same thing.
And respectively, you've completely eliminated a really powerful tool that helps people interact with their healthcare.
Yeah, thank you. Senator Everard.
Calming down.
Of course.
So all these medical records are held captive by the portal?
No, sir.
Right. So follow up.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. So if a child goes in for an MRI, you can't really see it from a parent's perspective. That's ridiculous.
No, Senator, I'm saying that's incorrect. A parent can request child's medical record at any time, and it will be provided electronically or hard copy, anytime in compliance with the law as it exists today. What I'm talking about is the patient portal, which is this user interface where you log on to send a message to your provider or schedule an appointment or get lab results or the like. And that patient portal doesn't have the technology capability to parse out what might be protected information from what's not protected information. But a parent will absolutely receive the medical records of their minor, of their children, via hard copy or electronic means, so an email with a file that goes through all the medical record of their minor. What I'm talking about is the technology challenge that currently exists with accessing it through the patient portal, which is also should not be considered a complete medical record. It shouldn't be considered, an official medical record.
I'm kind of struggling with this. May I follow?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's not technology to separate a particular item on
Correct.
Please explain.
So the portals, again, are built not with the consideration in some cases that it would be considered an official medical record. Okay? So it's a user interface. It gives you the ability to schedule appointments, get responses from your doctor about various messages you might have submitted, but it's not built to be considered an official medical record.
One final question, because I'm really struggling.
Certainly.
with you. So as far as state law and federal law, how are they similar or different with respect to this privacy issue?
I think that's a fair question. I can provide you with a bunch of information on that goes into extensive detail about federal and state, regulatory protections for minors to consent to various care on their own. But I don't have that listed right now.
I have to follow up then.
That's what I'm here for, Senator. Bell, so I appreciate it.
So with regarding the care, if they ask for a certain type of care, that's almost under contract law. Basically, if they're saying, hey, we have, I want this or I don't want this, but if I want some kind of a treatment, then there's contract law under 18 years old without parental consent. Is that legal?
Not sure I understand the question with regard to contract law. I'm not a lawyer, so
Yeah.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Maybe I can help out. I think what he's saying is, are there certain requests that a minor can make that are protected under law that would result in treatment, and even though they're a minor?
What I've tried to speak to is that minors can consent to various, very specified, it's specified what they're able to consent to on their own. Substance use treatment, behavioral mental health treatment. And I can, this all goes into great detail about what that is. I can provide additional documentation about what that is. And that's in order to ensure that the minor doesn't delay care, or because they're ashamed of, trying to get treatment for a sexually transmitted disease, whatever it might be.
Right, but that involves a contract.
There's no contract between
For
the
services.
minor and the provider. You're not going to sign a contract to
But
get
somebody's got to
care.
pay for that.
Or they,
And I know Senator Birdsall has a follow-up too, but again, what I'm trying to get at here is, in normal circumstances, that would, an adult you'd have to be an adult, but there are certain parts of the law, both statute in New Hampshire law and federal law, that says there are certain circumstances that a minor can enter into an agreement separate from the bill that we have here to get certain types of treatment.
they can seek care
Okay.
on their own and
Seeking
receive that
care, that's
care.
probably
I
a
wouldn't
better-
say it's, a signed agreement to get care.
Correct.
Or they can seek care, absolutely. Yes, but it's not under any kind of contract or, signed legal agreement.
Yikes. I'm struggling with this.
We're going to have an attorney come
Yeah.
talk to us in a minute who
Sure.
is
I'm not going to ask him.
Senator Birdsall.
So just maybe to clarify for the question before. So there are different types of portals, and you have Epic's MyChart, you have eClinicWorks, Helo app, Athena Health, Veradigm. They all have different aspects of it. Not all of them allow full access to it. Not all of them allow, what do I want to say? Allow to separate the difference.
Capable of separate.
Right.
Yep.
So what you're saying, and every doctor or every hospital may have a different app.
That's right.
So if there's one particular one that can't differentiate, then that's going to put then they're going to have to shut that down. It's just a matter of which apps the hospitals or the health providers use.
That's right. Some are not capable of parsing it out. And the hospital is always going to stand on the side of ensuring that they're in compliance with protecting patient health information, protected health information. And If that means that they have to shut down a portal in order to do so, that will be the unintended consequence, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ben.
Thank
There was a
you.
lot of questions there, a lot there. Courtney Tanner. I got a couple lawyers on this list here.
Good.
But,
That's good. Good morning. So for the record, Courtney Tanner, I'm the Senior Director of Government Relations at Dartmouth Health. Senator, I was starting to get eager to speak too, because I'm a mom of a child who has a rare esophageal disorder, and I don't even let her dad manage her care. So I totally appreciate wanting to be super hands-on with my kiddo's care. The 2-year-old, I think I'd send in with dad. She needs less care, but at Dartmouth Health, we are proud to be the largest pediatric provider group across the state. We truly do care for kids across the entire state of New Hampshire and into Vermont. We have, of course, our primary care pediatric, but we also have access to specialty care, neuro, oncology, gastroenterology, all of the specialty care that our pediatric population needs in the state. Dartmouth Health is the only children's hospital in the state, and part of that is our Children's Advocacy Protection Program, which provides consultation and evaluation and forensic services for kiddos who have experienced horrific abuse and neglect experiences, and we're really proud to be the provider of that program. We have sites across the state in Manchester and in Lebanon where we provide that really comprehensive care for those vulnerable kiddos. We also are the clinical operators of Hampstead, and I'm just kind of showing the breadth of the pediatric population that we support across the state and the different types of care that we're providing for children across the state of New Hampshire. If my department chair of pediatrics was sitting here, he would say, we need parents. We need parents. We need parents to be supporting their kids' care, to be involved in treatment planning 95% of the time. And then, yes, I did go to law school. There's always the general rule, and then there are the exceptions to the rule. So some of those exceptions are going to be abuse and neglect cases. There are going to be certain circumstances where it's not appropriate to have parents involved in the case. I do see that this bill does try to articulate that in some of the protective orders in lines 15 through 18. However, we have some concerns of how this is drafted and would have some amendments because we'd want this to be cleaned up a bit. There are also often times where there are protective orders for parents and children. For example, if there's a domestic violence circumstance or if there's a different protective order. Again, I see that there's an attempt to try to incorporate that into the statute, but it does need some cleanup. There are, for example, just this little minor thing, there are the verbiage says pursuant to RSA, and it enumerates our New Hampshire RSAs. What happens if there's a protective order from Massachusetts, Vermont, Maine, Texas? So we want to make sure this is incorporating other states. And then Ben was working on articulating there are certain times when there are other episodes of care that parents don't need to consent to those treatments. So, what happens when a 17-year-old boy goes in for his physical, sorry if I may, goes in for his physical and needs to be treated for an STI. Doesn't want that. It will go on his medical record. Doesn't want mom and dad to see that he had an STI. Mom and dad Mike will get an episode of care if they're covered. And so that will say primary care visit. That's the EOB, the explanations of their benefits. The primary care visit happened. Mom and dad paid for that. But that medical record, the treatment for the STI, will be redacted if mom and dad seek that medical record. That's one example I was thinking about.
So, and I think we're kind of getting at is the bill passes. And let's say you decide you're going to invest the money to bring to probably write new software, work with your vendor to do that, to comply with the law. There will still be things that the parent will not be able to see.
Yes.
Because that is protected in other parts of the law, both statewide and federally.
Yes, absolutely. And so actually at Dartmouth Health, I would just say, Senator Avard, there's kind of two different ways parents can view portals. One, before a child turns 12, parents have full access to the medical record on the portal. Once a child is 12 and they're an adolescent, access to information, certain information looks different. An MRI, test results from certain labs, CBC, standard care, that's all going to show up. It's just protected care, access to substance use disorder, confidential birth control, STI, things that policymakers are saying, this is really important that teenagers have access to this care so we don't have a broader crisis on our hands.
So, okay, I'm gonna take one more thing. So the proper way to do this, to achieve the result, is to change every state law that talks about that adolescent carve out and then change every federal law. And because we're still gonna be back here talking about this if we don't do that.
It would take a lot of legislative drafting and work. We'd want to be a part of the table, but yes, we'd have to do a lot of changes.
Senator Abard.
Thank you, Courtney.
Yes, of
So,
course.
listening to your as it sounded as though you can make this work.
Well, we would, I think that we could, I've worked on this bill, Senator Avard, for like 4 years, and we have some ideas about how we could make an amendment. It's going to take some work, but I'd be happy to roll my sleeves up with you to see, to clean up this proposal.
Let's roll them up.
Okay,
Thank
let's
you.
do it.
Any other questions? Thank you very
Thank
much. Aubrey Friedman.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, Aubrey Friedman, I live in Bridgewater. I speak in support of this bill. I'm going to change my testimony a little bit. I obviously still support parents being able to get the information that they need to make the best decisions for, they're still, as was mentioned, they're financially responsible for their kids until they turn 18. So how can you not get certain information? But again, the point was brought up. There are federal and state laws that when you turn 12, kids are treated like adults. They get to keep certain information from their parents, which I totally disagree with, but this bill is not changing that at all. So the issue on these portals, and it was said that these would be an expense to the hospitals and medical centers to adjust, you got 2 tiers, one for the kid who's 12 and above. Certain things are secret from the parents, and then where everything is available to the parents. I think these hospitals and medical centers, there's a push to do everything online. They don't want to mail out bills and papers and all that stuff. They can figure out a way to do it, even if it costs them a little bit of money with these software changes, because they don't want the old-fashioned way of mailing out and faxing. You wanted lab results for your kid. They had a test, and it'll have to be. They'd rather not do it. They want to do everything online, basically, so they can figure out a way to do it. And I think they will, because it's cheaper that way. So as I said, I don't agree with hiding things from parents, but this bill, that's already the law in federal and state, and this bill is not changing that. So the online should be easier for parents to get information. And those are the reasons I support the bill.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Maura Weston.
Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Maura Weston. I'm here today on behalf of the New Hampshire Medical Society. Thank you for the opportunity. I will be submitting a letter from Dr. Todd Morrill for the record as well. We are here today in opposition to this bill. We absolutely recognize the important responsibility that parents have in caring and raising for their children and even coordinating medical care. But we also recognize the importance of providing minors between the ages of 12 and 18 access to confidential medical care under state and federal law. And there are protections in law that are based on medical evidence and science, particularly in the areas of substance abuse, sexual health, reproductive care, and mental health as well. Following what Ben Bradley said, we really do oppose the inclusion of portals in the definition of medical records. Parents do have access, as you've heard, to medical records, but the portal itself is not an adequate medical record. And so the care, if one has access through the portal, care that is meant to be confidential and is intended to be confidential would no longer be confidential. In conclusion, effectively balancing the needs of guardians and parents with those of minors who need access to care is paramount. Again, this bill probably doesn't adequately address the cases of neglect and abuse as well. We think that that language would need to be worked on. And we are happy to work with stakeholders on these issues, but the bill as drafted does not adequately protect access to care for minors. Thank you.
Thank you, Maura. And Ben had mentioned this, and I just want to run it by you as well. Is it true to assume the court does not look at patient portals as a medical record?
I'm not a litigator, but my understanding is that the portal itself is, as you put it, a customer service option and is meant for coordination of care and does not serve as a medical record itself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Our rapidly dwindling committee. All right.
I appreciate you
Thank you
listening.
very
Thank you
much.
for the opportunity.
Simon Amaya Price.
Good morning, committee. Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Simon Amaya Price, and I'm in support of this bill. I'm here speaking today on my own behalf, but also on behalf of a few New Hampshire residents who are not able to be here today. The U.S. Supreme Court has repeatedly recognized the right of parents to direct the upbringing of their children, including, crucially, the right to direct their health care. In Parham versus J.R. 1979, the court affirmed that parents have plenary authority over their child's medical care and that we must presume that fit parents act in their child's best interest. Yet right now in New Hampshire, at least 4 hospitals are blocking parents from full access to their minor child's electronic medical records through patient portals. They cite adolescent confidentiality policies that kick in as young as age 12, as mentioned earlier, hiding critical information about mental health, medications, diagnoses, and treatments. Parents cannot direct healthcare if they're kept in the dark. This is also relevant to my personal experience. I spent about 3 years believing that I was a girl trapped in a boy's body after gender ideology was pushed in my 9th grade health class. Without my father's persistent involvement and full access to my medical information, partially full access, I could easily have been placed on the path to irreversible medical harm. My father put his foot down and prevented that. While I hated him for it at the time, today I'm 21 and grateful he did. My medical records still contain inaccuracies from that time, listing female reproductive organs that I never had. If parents cannot see the full electronic health record, they cannot correct errors, spot red flags, or make informed decisions. HB 1378 simply ensures that parents have meaningful access to their minor child's electronic medical records. It removes the barriers that currently prevent families from seeing the complete picture. This is not about denying teenagers privacy. It is about recognizing that parents, not the state or hospitals, have the fundamental duty and right to direct the health care of their children. I urge the committee to vote ought to pass on HB 1378 and reaffirm that in New Hampshire, parents have the meaningful right to direct the upbringing of their children. Lastly, I don't think some of the previous testifiers have read the bill, and specifically exceptions under 2A through C. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You said that there are 4 hospitals blocking the electronic medical record.
Concord Hospital, DMC Primary Care, Spear Memorial Hospital, and Dartmouth Health.
So if a parent called Concord Hospital and said, I want my child's medical record, they would be blocked from that.
My understanding is that there are certain cases for a child above 12 years of age, especially in cases where that child is experiencing things like gender dysphoria or substance disorders. So under the My Patient Connect portal for Concord Hospital, it says, and I quote, "You're permitted to access your child's health information until your child reaches the age of 12. At that time, your access is automatically removed," end quote.
So if they call the medical records department, they would not have access to that.
That is my understanding, yes.
And then you said Concord, Spear.
DMC, Primary Care, and Dartmouth Health. They all have kind of a little bit of a patchwork of policies. Dartmouth Health switches parents from full pediatric proxy to adolescent proxy at age 12. 12 seems to be the turnover date for most of these healthcare providers.
What we heard is there are certain protections for adolescents under state and federal law. So even if, they would have, and I think the portal thing is really muddying this.
Yeah.
Because I think, on its face, a parent should be able to call the medical records department and get a complete, and I say complete medical record,
Yes.
because what we heard is there are some things in other sections of the law, both statewide and federally, that are blocked from a parent.
Correct.
So if you're trying to achieve full transparency, even this bill wouldn't do that. Would you agree?
Correct. I would agree. I think this bill is a necessary first step and that there is some cleanup to do. I want to reiterate again that this bill does not conflict with existing state and federal law, as 2A clarifies.
Okay, thank you. Senator Avard.
Thank you. And you said, you quoted the Supreme Court decision on a particular situation. So how does that affect the federal law that is in statute now? Has that been challenged?
The federal statute you're saying? Okay. So in this particular case, again, I'm not a lawyer, want to re-articulate that. I just really like law. So Parham versus Junior, this was a 1979 case. If I remember correctly, it was concerning the parent's ability to, I believe it was either North or South Carolina, their ability to put their child in a mental health institution when the parent deems it necessary without the state interfering. This gave parents plenary authority. So this means a couple of things. This means that parents are assumed to have the best interest of their child in mind. Yeah. So they are the number one people who make medical decisions about their children, except in exceptions with custody, protective orders, things like that. And so in a lot of I do believe personally that there is a conflict and that is something that would need to be litigated. But
so follow up, if I may.
Yes.
Yeah. So with regards to gender dysphoria and,
yes.
and the items that we've been talking about in the last couple of years with, medical procedures, I think we banned one particular procedure under 18 years old. Those were basically hidden from the parents' purview in the past until we passed a couple of laws. Is that correct?
Correct.
And this would prevent certain leanings of medical societies to sway one way or another without the parental's consent. Is that what you're testifying to?
Yes, and there are a couple additional issues to point out here. So in cases where you have like school-based, so like the Manchester School District administers so-called gender support plans. So if a student comes in and says, hey, I'm a different gender than what I was born as, the school will make a plan with them, not necessarily with the parent's knowledge or consent. And I'm sure Manchester isn't the only school district which does this. That is not a neutral intervention. If you're lying to a kid all the way through the age they're 18, they're not suddenly able to make a meaningful, informed decision the day they turn 18 about whether or not to cut their breasts off or take cross-sex hormones. So that's personally my chief concern because that's the most direct harm.
And so without this bill, that gives them cover?
Yes.
That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
I'm struggling to see how without this bill that gives them cover.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I think that what we've heard is parents do have access to a complete medical record, but there are certain things within that medical record that are protected outside of this bill. So that we would pass this bill and there would still be, if we want to really open the door on this bill doesn't begin to touch that because there are still other areas that are protected under that veil that this bill doesn't address.
So there is a margin. In fact, I'll quote again to you from Concord Hospital, quote, "You're permitted to access your child's health information until your child reaches the age of 12. At that time, your access is automatically removed."
Okay, and that's wrong. From what,
That's wrong.
That's what we, based on what we've been hearing from both sides, that's not an accurate statement.
That is an accurate statement. There are artificial barriers placed to general access. And secondly, doctors oftentimes make the determination, especially in cases of gender dysphoria, that for the child's health, it is not appropriate to tell the parent, and this happened in my case, which was in Massachusetts, to clarify. Doctors and pediatricians will oftentimes make the unilateral decision without consulting the parent that socially transitioning the child, which is legal currently in the state of New Hampshire and is not a neutral intervention, is the appropriate course of action. And they can, in fact, work with schools. I don't have a specific case in New Hampshire of a doctor working with schools. Again, we have a bill about this later. But doctors can administer psychotherapy, diagnostic tests, etc., without the parent's knowledge and withhold those medical records from the parent because the doctor believes it's in the child's best interest.
So, may I ask?
Yes.
Yes, but, and I'm tracking with you on this. However, there are cases of abuse as well that we need to address as well. So there are some parents that are abusing the children.
Yes.
And those children need a certain privacy. So there's a huge tension here that I'm feeling. I'm siding with the parents on this, but at the same time, there needs to be certain protections. Is there a common ground that we can find here?
Absolutely. Yeah. So under 2C in the bill at hand, it says when a healthcare provider has so 2 says a parent or legal guardian of a minor shall be entitled to have full access to the medical records of their minor child or ward, except C, when a healthcare provider has determined by evidence based upon articulable facts that disclosure of the records to a parent or legal guardian of a minor is likely to result in abuse or neglect. Abuse or neglect, the definition of that, we have another bill this session, I do not remember the number, which specifies that raising your child in accordance with their natal sex is not child abuse or neglect. So there's an interaction there where the specific case I was talking about earlier would be outlawed if this bill and that other bill were both passed.
Thank you. Follow up?
Nope.
Senator Birdsell? Nope. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Claire Abernathy.
Good morning, committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Claire Abernathy, and I'm a 21-year-old detransitioner here to express my strong support for HB 1378. At its core, this bill is about a parent's right to direct the upbringing, care, and well-being of their children. This is not a new or radical idea. It's a principle deeply rooted in both law and common sense, that parents, not institutions, bear the primary responsibility for guiding their children through the most vulnerable and formative years of their lives. Today, that principle is increasingly under strain. Across the country, we're seeing a growing trend in which medical providers position themselves not as partners with parents, but as intermediaries between parents and their children. In certain cases, children are encouraged to view their parents as obstacles rather than advocates, particularly when it comes to sensitive and life-altering medical decisions. This is deeply concerning. No one knows a child better than their parents. No one has greater long-term investment in that child's well-being, and no one is more accountable for the consequences of decisions made during childhood. To exclude parents from full access to their child's medical information is to sever a critical line of responsibility or trust. I know this from lived experience. As a minor, I was placed on a medical pathway that altered my body in profound and irreversible ways. These decisions were made during a time where I was not developmentally equipped to fully understand the long-term consequences. Looking back, I needed more oversight, more caution, and more involvement from adults responsible for my care, not less. Medical records are not trivial documents. They contain the information necessary for parents to ask questions, seek second opinions, and intervene when something does not seem right. Without access to that information, parents are effectively sidelined at the very moment their involvement is most critical. Supporters of restricting parental access often frame it as a matter of protecting a child's autonomy or privacy, but children are not miniature adults. They rely on the judgment and protection of the adults in their lives, especially when it comes to complex medical decisions with lifelong implications. Transparency does not harm families, it strengthens them. It ensures that decisions are made collaboratively with full information and with the child's best interest at heart. HB 1378 is a necessary step towards restoring that transparency and reaffirming the role of parents as the primary stewards of their children's health and future. I urge you to support this bill. Thank you for your time and consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Melissa Blazek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Melissa Blasek. I'm here with Rebuild NH. The sponsor was not able to be here. I wasn't planning on speaking on this bill, but I have worked on it for the last 4 years, and so I feel like I could be clarifying in the absence of the sponsor. So here's the problem that I feel like most testimony has not actually laid out what's happening. So yes, it is true that every parent has the right, according to federal law, to access their child's physical paper medical record. And if their child is over the age of 12 years old and they request that medical record, they're going to get it hand redacted for 3 services, okay? And this is per federal and state law. Addiction services, STD testing and treatment, and birth control. But what happens in last year when this bill, and by the way, this exact bill passed both the House and the Senate last year, and then, got Christmas treed and killed, the silliness of the end of year. So it's just kind of a victim of that. But what happens is that over the age of 12, they get cut off from the portal access. Now, I heard testimony that, well, they have the right to access their child's electronic medical record, except that I have yet to see evidence that they can access the medical record in any other way except through the portal. So last year I went through every pediatrician's office I could find to try to find all of their policies. And I actually couldn't find evidence of a single practice that did not have a policy of cutting off access to the portal at either 12 or 14 years old. I kind of gave up searching after a while because it was just everyone. And so that's what this bill is hoping to rectify. I heard some conflicting testimony here because no one is attempting to change state or federal law with this bill and say that those 3 things should not be redacted. What we're saying is that the parent should be given a login to the portal where those things are redacted from the portal. And I guess I don't see how that's so complicated. There are medical codes. I've consulted, well, my husband is, knows a bit about coding, and he doesn't see how that would be a challenge to make a plugin for the portal to simply redact in the parent sign-in for those 3 things so that they otherwise have access to every other piece of information on the portal about their child's health and well-being. So that I hope that clarifies a little bit. I would be happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on 1378? We'll close the hearing. All right, moving right along, we've got two more bills. We have 58 minutes to do them. We're going to open the hearing on House Bill 360, prohibiting public schools from performing surgical procedures or prescribing pharmaceutical drugs. I'm going to call the prime sponsor, Representative Noble is here. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman and Senator Abart. For the record, I'm Kristen Noble, and I represent Hillsborough District 2, the town of Bedford. School-based health centers have been around for decades. There are thousands across the country. They can offer a wide variety of services such as primary care, mental health services, sexual health services, health education, and some even provide care for family members. It varies from state to state. I believe New Hampshire may have been the last state to start implementing school-based health centers. There is one now at Somersworth High School, and I have some information on that I could leave with you. These can be funded by federal grants as well as state and local funding. The funding also varies from state to state. The U.S. Department of Education had grants for full-service community schools. Manchester was awarded one of these grants in fiscal year 23 for $15 million over 5 years. It was awarded for capacity building and development, and the new school they will be building will contain a school-based health center. HB 360 is aimed at stopping our public schools from also becoming medical facilities. It does two simple things: prohibits both surgeries and the prescribing of pharmaceutical drugs on school grounds. So why the surgeries? Many of the school-based health centers around the country offer IUDs and other birth control implants. There is someone here that will talk about an incident that happened with a student in Maine around this and other prescription medication. While parental consent is required, the potential for parental authority to be undermined does exist when a parent is not present while their child is receiving medical care. We have already seen this happen in New Hampshire with vaccine clinics in schools. A child was vaccinated against a parent's written wishes. I believe that school-based health centers will put local taxpayers at risk of paying for some of this, even when the grants, especially when the grants run out. Public schools are not meant to be medical facilities. They have one purpose, and that is to educate children. Please vote ought to pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Just you could enlighten me a little bit in that last sentence you said. What doesn't go? What aren't we tasked with our schools to do these days?
It does seem that they want to make schools be everything to everybody, but the purpose should be academics.
So I'm assuming for every minute you're doing a whatever, right? You're not in class.
Correct. That's correct.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the committee? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's go with Aubrey Friedman.
Welcome. Mr. Chairman, committee members, Aubrey Friedman, I live in Bridgewater. I speak in support of this bill. We have 2 school districts here in New Hampshire that have these full-fledged medical centers. As was mentioned, Manchester and the Somersworth school districts have them. And the whole point of them was that they were saying kids are not doing well academically because they've got mental problems, they've got health problems, and we need to take care of the whole person, this whole child concept. So, and this will, if we do this, and then that will make the academic results better. Well, if you look at the proficiency results, Manchester tops out at 28% on their top proficiency rate. 28%. Somersworth is 41%. So actually, having all these medical services and the whole child and the counseling and all this kind of stuff hasn't improved the academics at all. I say schools, again, should be schools again. Now, the thing that the schools will say, well, we're getting parental consent. And so, and they do try to get it. Of course, they sometimes ignore parental consent because, as was mentioned with the vaccine clinics, there were some problems with that. But also was mentioned, what about the liability question? If something goes wrong medically on school grounds, because these medical centers are on school grounds, it will be the taxpayers who will have to pay for this. And it was also mentioned that these grants are going to run out. The federal government is going to run out of money at some point, and it will be the local taxpayers who will get stuck with this. And also, lastly, was this, I guess someone else will talk about what happened in Maine, but I've got the article attached to my backup. A 17-year-old girl, she came home from school where they have one of these medical centers. She had a Zoloft pills in a plastic bag. And that's how, and her father saw it and freaked out, and it was a whole big embarrassment for the school and for the medical center. So for people who say these things can't happen here in New Hampshire, if they happen elsewhere, they can happen here too. We should get ahead of the game and stop medical, well, if they happen at a hospital, whatever, we can't do anything about that, but definitely we should let schools be schools again. They got enough to work on, and those are the reasons I support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, I just want to remind everybody, we are going to be leaving at 12. Thank you for your testimony. No questions. And I don't see any opposition to this bill, so if we can get to the point, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
That, Mr. Chairman, you're now in charge.
Thank you very much. Simon, you're back up.
Good morning once again, committee. Nice to see you again. My name is Simon Amaya Price. I'm in support of this bill. I believe that HB 360 is the necessary next step after HB 1378. It keeps public schools in the realm of education and out of the realm of healthcare. A number of schools in New Hampshire have crossed a dangerous line. Through multi-tiered system of supports for behavioral health, or MTSS-B framework, they run mental health screenings using tools like DESA, administer the Youth Risk Behavior Survey with only passive consent, create gender support plans, and push psychological interventions that look a lot like therapy, often without meaningful parental knowledge or consent. Planned Parenthood, while not directly or funding or running school-based health centers, does assist schools with sexual health policy development and consulting on the policies and administration of these aforementioned services. These are not neutral acts. Research shows that these school-based psychological interventions can cause iatrogenic harm caused by the treatment or testing itself. Some programs make adolescents more anxious, more symptomatic, and more likely to pursue medical paths they later regret. In gender-related cases, early school support acts as an active intervention that locks in confusion and steers kids towards irreversible harm once they become adults. Gender dysphoria, eating disorders, self-harm behavior, and suicidality are all known to be socially contagious and worsen through the rumination encouraged by school-based psychological interventions. Again, I lived this. My 9th grade health class and school support system fed my delusion for years. And if not for my parents, I would have been irreversibly damaged by their failure. HB 360 draws the line where it belongs. Public schools are not healthcare providers. Medical decisions belong with parents and licensed professionals, not with school staff playing therapist and doctor. Schools should not be prescribing medications, God forbid carrying out surgical procedures or performing risky diagnostic tests. Please take this opportunity to show New Hampshire that in New Hampshire, parents, not schools, must direct our children's healthcare. I urge you to vote ought to pass on this bill. And then a side note, the bill I mentioned before in the questions is Bill HB 1376 relative to a parent's ability to raise their child in a manner consistent with the child's biological sex. That was heard on March 25th by the Senate Committee on Children and Family Law, and that was sponsored by Senators Avard and Murphy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And actually, I don't have any questions. Do you have any questions, Senator?
So I pretty much agree with you, but my concern, and I probably should have asked the the sponsor. For instances like allergies, when you have an EpiPen that you have to administer, would that be considered a diagnostic tech, a surgical procedure, or prescribing pharmaceutical drugs?
Yeah. So going by the text of the law, or the proposed bill rather, the first point says, as we've all read it, they can provide school health services, including nurse services and school physician services to every child. Under point 2, shall not allow any school nurse or school physician to perform diagnostic tests, surgical procedures, or prescribe pharmaceutical drugs. EpiPens are considered a pharmaceutical drug, like Zoloft psychiatric medication. There's nothing in this bill that would prevent the administration of already prescribed medications, which EpiPens would fall under.
Okay, thank you.
That's a good point, Senator. And I'm thinking about some of our past legislation around that, but I don't have any questions for you.
Yep.
I do have, so Representative Noble, don't leave. I've got another question for you before you take off, unless you have to be somewhere right now. Okay, I do have something that came up as I was thinking about this. Thank you very much. We're going to call Claire Abernathy.
Hello again. Many of my points on this bill are going to be, or were going to be, reiterations of what I testified to in my previous testimony. So I'm going to skip those and keep it brief in respect for your time. My name is Claire Abernathy, and I'm here to express strong support for HB 360. This is once again about reaffirming that parents have a primary right and responsibility to direct the upbringing and medical care of their children. It ensures that schools cannot prescribe medications or perform surgeries, which are actions that belong firmly within the domain of licensed medical professionals working in direct partnership with parents and well outside the school environment. It's not about denying healthcare or preventing schools from administering already prescribed medications. It's about ensuring that care is delivered in the right setting with the right safeguards and full parental involvement. Parents deserve transparency and primary authority over their children's upbringing, and schools should remain focused on education, not medical intervention. I urge you to support HB 360. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Melissa Blazek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, member of the committee. I'm Melissa Blazek. I'm here representing Rebuild NH. I just want to quickly answer Senator Birdsell's question. I'm not sure where you're seeing diagnostic. This is only prescriptions and surgical procedures. And if a child has a prescription, another doctor has given them a prescription, let's say for an EpiPen, right? All that the school nurse say is doing is administering that prescription, okay? So they're unrelated things. At its core, this bill addresses a fundamental question. What are schools for? Schools exist to educate children. They are not hospitals. They are not clinics. They are not meant to function as full-service healthcare providers. HB 360 helps preserve that distinction by prohibiting prescriptions and surgical procedures in school-based health clinics. It does not eliminate basic care. It simply draws a reasonable boundary so that schools remain focused on education and not healthcare delivery. When we embed healthcare providers directly into schools, we fundamentally change the school environment. Students no longer are just attending math, science, and reading. They are being rooted into medical services throughout the school day. Teachers and administrators become gatekeepers to healthcare access. The nurse's office becomes a medical clinic, and the educational mission begins to blur with medical decision-making. Supporters often say that New Hampshire requires parental consent, but we have seen how easily that safeguards can fail when parents are not physically present. Forms are miscommunicated, students are pulled from class, decisions happen quickly, and when care is delivered during the school day, the natural pause that usually exists, the call home, the appointment scheduling, the drive to the doctor, disappears. That pause is not an inconvenience. It is a safeguard that ensures parents are involved in meaningful medical decisions. Federal law requires that children over the age of 12 be able to access certain services, including birth control, without parental consent. Traditionally, that still meant a child had to be driven to a doctor, schedule an appointment, and seek care outside of school. School-based health clinics remove those barriers entirely. They create unfettered access to medical interventions during the school day. We can see the dangers of this model in a troubling case from Maine. A teenage girl visited a school-based health clinic and was prescribed oral birth control without her parents' knowledge. A year later, all the girls who had been prescribed oral contraceptives were called back and told that they must choose between a birth control implant or an IUD. This particular student chose the implant. She was then instructed to continue taking the oral birth control at the same time. After school events like prom, the clinic distributed Plan B in the hallways. At this point, the minor was on 3 forms of hormonal birth control simultaneously: an implant, daily oral contraceptions, and emergency contraception, all coordinated through the school-based health clinic, all during the school day and all without her parents knowing. When she began to feel unwell, she returned to the clinic. She was diagnosed with clinical depression and prescribed Zoloft, again without parental knowledge. Layer upon layer of medical decisions were made inside the school building during school hours, outside of the awareness of her family. Now, this is not what schools should be doing. New Hampshire is currently the last state in the country to begin adopting school-based health clinics, and we currently have one that's fully functional in Somersworth. This gives us the unique opportunity to learn from what has happened elsewhere. In other states, these clinics have expanded far beyond minor care. They are prescribing birth control, providing gender counseling, coordinating puberty blockers, and offering a wide range of primary care services, all within schools. Regardless of where one stands on those services, they are a significant medical intervention. They belong in medical settings, not educational ones. Schools should not be transformed into one-stop healthcare hubs where students move from algebra class to medical consultations and prescription decisions. HB 360 preserves the proper role of schools. It allows basic services, but draws the clear line at prescriptions and surgical procedures. It ensures that when medical care becomes serious, it happens outside the school setting where parents are naturally involved. We should not be turning schools into clinics. We should keep them focused on learning. HB 360 does exactly that.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Representative Wheeler, did you want to talk? You weren't just raising your hand back there, were you?
It's like raising my hand. Thank you, Chairman Rochefort, members of the Senate Health and Human Services Committee. For the record, my name is Representative Jonah Orion Wheeler, and I represent the towns of Peterborough and Sharon. And I had to look it up on the House roll call sheet just to make sure. But I was thinking and hearing the testimony of this bill, I'm fairly sure this is one of those pieces of legislation that came through, and I'm embarrassed to admit, but happy to do so, to expose the fact that this is what happens on the House floor, that I just followed the flag. I followed the flag, and I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done that because they were, I think, relaying the fact that this bill wasn't necessary. Well, that's just wrong. It's plain wrong. Schools should not be performing these medical procedures or, God forbid, as others said, surgeries or prescribing antidepressant drugs to the children or any medicine for that matter. Medical decisions shouldn't be being made within the educational facilities of our state. And so we don't have as pointed an example as Ms. Blazek just gave us with what was happening in Maine. But I think, as others have testified to, we should put the guardrails up before this even occurs. The fact that this is even a discussion, when I was looking at your calendar last Thursday, I wrote a note, in what world does this even occur now? Because why are we even discussing this? Schools are for education, period, full stop, end of story. And so I wanted to just come here and say, I voted wrongly, and I hope that you pass this piece of legislation onto the governor's desk so that we protect our children and our schools from these medical
Thank you, Representative. I think Senator Abart has a question for you.
Yeah, thank you for your courage and coming out and saying, I appreciate this. That's all.
Well, thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much. I'm going to call Representative Noble back. I've got a couple questions.
You're in trouble.
No, I just had something I thought of. So, thank you, Representative. So, have you, just questioning, and I don't have the answer to this, so I'm hoping you do. I know it's dangerous to ask a question you don't always have the answer to, but have you heard from any, will this impact the Rural Health Transformation Grant and what they envision with that as far as expanding healthcare access in our rural communities?
I do not know the answer to that.
Okay. Secondly, Senator Birdsell was asking about epinephrine. And I think it was last year that we had a bill in this committee where it allowed schools to have a supply of epinephrine. So they were allowed to actually have just bulk, if you will, epinephrine on the shelf in case of an emergency. And in that case, we put in there that if somebody's having an anaphylactic emergency, it's an RSA 31842, that a nurse was allowed to use that bulk and administer it. And I just want to make sure we're not in conflict with that, because that was a good law, a good piece of legislation. And I believe it started from the House originally. And I think it came out of education originally, and we ended up with it.
Yes, I believe it did.
Any concern about this conflicting, or is there thought, and maybe we should clarify that?
That probably should be something that we create a carve out for or clarification.
Okay, very good. That's it, unless anyone else has another question. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
With that, I don't have anybody signed up for HB 360. If there's someone else that would like to speak, seeing none, I'm going to close the hearing. So I'm going to open the hearing on House Bill 1335, and I'll ask the prime sponsor to introduce his bill.
Good morning, Chairman Rochefort and honorable committee members. For the record, I'm Bob Wary. I have the privilege of representing Hillsborough District 13, the great town of Hudson. I'm testifying in support of this bill to support healthcare providers to disclose to patients when they are receiving a substantive financial incentive for a treatment or anything that they're offering. This is based upon simple principles of informed consent, and that certainly in clinical care, when in clinical studies, when a physician has a financial interest, God bless you, when a physician has a financial interest, one of the things that they have to do is they have to disclose their associated gains, or how they're getting that. This is because the federal regulations recognize that when a physician is receiving financial incentives of some sort, it biases their conduct in the research. I think the same thing can be true in the commercial realm. Now, I won't read my testimony just to save some time, but basically that's it. Informed consent, if there's a substantive opportunity to gain some money, then that should be disclosed to the client. We had in the House hearings people who actually spoke to this. They said that there was one doctor had worked with another, and that other doctor was giving to their patients some supplements that they were receiving a lot of financial reimbursement for. And in the end, those supplements cause some harm to the patients receiving those. So would that physician have been stopped from doing that if they had to disclose that sort of thing? And would the patients have not accepted it? Perhaps. So this at least puts up a little guardrail for that standpoint. Lastly, I just mentioned real quickly that there was a proposed amendment. It had some good definitions and some good information to disclose in a written format. There were some other parts that were, I think, objectionable because it dragged in a lot of other healthcare provider positions to that amendment. But if you'd like, I can share that with the committee, and I do think there were some worthwhile things out of that amendment. With that, I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Senator Ebert.
Thank you, and thank you for your testimony. I was just reading in the minority report that this is already covered under rules.
I don't believe that's a correct statement. There is informed consent, but it doesn't. There's no specific provision that if the physician in a commercial setting, so they could have been talking about research, and that is true, because those are federal guidelines, and I have those listed in my testimony in the block text. It is not something that's within the current law regarding, at least to my knowledge. I looked it over, the law. I don't think it's there.
Yeah, I think what they said was the New Hampshire Administrative Code of Medicine 501.02H. A licensee shall adhere to the code of medical ethics concerning and current opinions with annotation, blah blah blah. So that's what I'm asking.
I think that's a broad and vague definition that doesn't speak to this matter.
Thank you.
I've got a question. So,
yes, sir.
Are you able to provide us with any empirical situation, aside from theoretical, where today, before this is signed into law, there has been patients that have been adversely affected by this scenario in New Hampshire?
There's been a reverse situation that has happened, is that there are some doctors who, if a patient is not taking a vaccination, for example, that they will decline to treat or cover that person any longer in their care. So, and the impetus is, it's kind of a little reversed engineered, but if they're gaining $60 per vaccination, and that's not a made up number, that's a number that is valid within medical codes and whatnot. And if a person is not, if the doctor is not meeting a certain vaccination threshold in their demographics for patients, then that causes issues with the insurance that is reimbursing them. So this is happening. It is tricky to understand the insurance implications.
So under that logic, if I were to, so this would apply to an orthopedic surgeon who is using a certain brand of knee replacement. If they're collecting a fee on every knee replacement they get, they would be caught up in this as well.
Well, are they getting, so that if they're using a certain brand, that are, if it's one thing if they're choosing to do that, but then they're getting a financial reimbursement.
And that's a kickback. That's covered under federal law. There's clear federal law, and the Department of Justice is very aggressive in enforcing that law. So I guess I'm having a hard time with that vaccination, analogy, because I know most of our doctors are employed under health systems. We have unfortunately very few private practitioners in this state. So one, you could delineate, you could make anything really, if they're making money on any treatment, if they're in private practice, they would be caught up in this. But the same doctor doing the same services, if they work for, XYZ hospital, because they're on the umbrella of hospital, they would not have to comply, correct?
I think as the bill was worded, it was if they were to receive from a entity a financial incentive above 5,000. So, you know, there's a carve out for conferences and things like that.
Right, that's the honor, that's the, you know, the conference fees, travel,
Right, yeah,
lodging.
exactly, which
But
makes
on
sense.
C, compensation includes payments, honoraria, travel, lodging, or any other transfer of value.
Yeah, the transfer value. Is that the wording that you're
Yeah,
concerned
yeah,
about?
reading it right, so line 10.
Right.
I see where you're trying to
Yeah,
get to
yeah,
with this.
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
you don't want the guy, and I've seen it, I witnessed it in my profession where,
Sure.
hey, we're selling XYZ, we'll send up a private jet for you and your 5 closest friends, we'll fly to Las Vegas, and what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, and then all of a sudden he's the number one prescriber in the region. I think we had a case in New Hampshire where there was a physician assistant that was prescribing a ton of fentanyl. He went to prison for it.
Yep.
And I kind of see where you're trying to do, but I don't necessarily know if it's captured in this.
I'm certainly open to amendments and help with this. I'm not. I don't care.
You don't need to-
I don't care. I don't care if my name is on it. I don't care.
All right, that's
I
fine.
just really want to protect people from undue influence when
All right.
possible.
Very good. Are there any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dr. Marie Ramus.
Good morning, Chair Rochefort.
Oh, you got to turn the microphone on. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, the red light.
We can't
yes.
hear anything, you know, I'm a child of the 80s and 90s. I hear whistling in my ears.
It's been a
most
long
days.
morning.
Yeah, my wife was like, "Oh, the peepers are out tonight." I'm like, I can't hear a thing. The peepers are out every night in
Peepers are
my
peeping.
ears.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony today. I am coming on behalf of the New Hampshire Medical Society, which, as you know, is a professional association that represents over 3,000 doctors in the state. And we are in opposition of this bill, and strongly recommend to vote for ITL for this bill. I'd like to provide a few points. One, I agree with our representative that physicians above anyone else in the health field want to protect the protection and provide patient autonomy. That is something that we not only have an oath for when we get our licenses, but we are heavily monitored as a result of that. I also want to suggest as well that there are some legal implications and potentially some unintended consequences of making this particularly law go through. One, this is already in action. You did allude to anti-kickback laws, which is a federal mandate already. We also have Stark laws. And I want to read specifically what Stark laws are, because I think it speaks to our representative's point. So a Stark law is actually a civil law that's prohibiting referrals for designated health services to entities where a physician has a financial interest, regardless of intent. And so this particular law is actually there in order to protect from exactly what this bill is talking about. That's been in law for decades now. And because of that, if there are any issues or if physicians do get indicted for Stark laws, you can have prison federal prison up to 10 years for this, fines up to $100,000. So there are really big consequences to that. So I wanted to make sure that that was highlighted. In addition to that, for the last over 10 years, we also have the Sunshine Act, which further protects patients and healthcare consumers, like we like to call them, from the very things that we're talking about. New Hampshire also has a law, in addition, in the state side that also speaks to this. So beyond that, as a physician, I want to bring 3 potential points that one may not necessarily consider as potential unintended consequences if this were to go and pass. So one, malpractice is a real thing. And so malpractice risk would actually increase because of, one, the lack of ability to really define what financial compensation is. Even in our representative's testimony now, there's difficulty for understanding between what is just regular compensation and copay from an insurance company versus getting something that I will be incentivized to get paid for if I were to prescribe or to provide for a patient. That's going to increase malpractice risk without improving patient care at all. The vast majority of physicians, we have to wear multiple hats. I don't think anyone in this room would want to have a pharmaceutical company make medications without having a physician's expertise in the development of that medication. I don't think anyone in this room would want to have public health laws or prescription or treatment opportunities without physicians who are trained for this for multiple thousands of hours providing input. And so just like patients have lives outside of the physician room, doctors also play multiple voluntary roles, this role included as president of the Medical Society, to protect their patients and their colleagues. So the other thing I'd like to bring is that additional regulatory requirements, they're burdensome and they divert patient care. I'd like to point out that there is an epidemic right now of lack of access, and we have multiple bills that's trying to increase access to care. The number one reason for burnout in physicians is administrivia. WAC, I call it, work after clinic, okay? All of the unnecessary paperwork that I need to do as a doctor so I can't take care of my patient. This is going to add unnecessary and undue documentation and therefore lack of access for my patients. Physicians already are subject to licensing board requirements, federal, state, like I mentioned, regulatory frameworks, and there are already established standards and documentation. The last thing I'd like to point out is the risk of patient privacy. We all have talked about HIPAA and how patients do have a right to protect their own information. The way that this bill is written right now does not provide adequate definition of what needs to be documented and therefore divulged from the physician office, and that can unintentionally create exposure for patient information. An example of that would be if there's a medication, for instance, that's only used for HIV treatment, for instance, which is protected by federal law. Well, if that is divulged, that could unintentionally provide access to information about a patient that is clearly protected by federal law. So that's a simple example. So those are the few things I wanted to bring out. The most important thing is that we, as a medical society, do appreciate the spirit of this recommended bill. And I'm glad to report to you that it's already being done. Physicians, above all else, want to do what's right. And we have a moral, a professional, and a legal obligation to make sure that we are disclosing things that could alter and cause bias in how we treat our patients. Thank you. I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Doctor. I think the intent, I know the intent because you told us, was to really look at maybe influence in prescribing and maybe undue influence in prescribing. And I was wondering if you could comment on the influence or undue influence that direct-to-consumer advertising has on prescribing versus something like this. What plays the bigger role? And, I mean, I can tell you from a layman's perspective, and here having a number of friends that are physicians, that they are under more influence from the direct-to-consumer advertising than they are flying someone to Vegas for a weekend, which isn't happening like it was 20 years ago because of all the rules and the laws that you mentioned. I mean, the Department of Justice is very serious about this. People do go to prison for this, and they lose their careers and everything they own for this. But if you could just comment briefly on the influence that direct-to-consumer advertising has on versus a $5,000 honoraria, which, is being covered under a number of other laws.
Thank you, certainly. I don't have specific numbers, but what I can tell you is that there's a magnitude of difference. There is a reason why pharmaceutical companies spend hundreds of millions of dollars every year on direct-to-consumer advertising, as well as lobbying to protect that, because it has increased use. A really good example of that is within the opioid epidemic, unfortunately. There was a huge market of direct-to-consumer advertising as a result of that. The fifth vital sign, folks used to say all the time, and make sure you ask your doctor about your pain. And that obviously led to an epidemic and multiple lives lost. And so every day, physicians have to deal with Dr. Google, they have to deal with Dr. TikTok, and they have to deal with with Dr. Friend, right? And every time we have the obligation to help provide information so that our patients can make informed decisions.
And just for commentary, as I was prepping last night for today, watching cable news and watching the advertisements, every advertisement had at least one drug ad, and every one of those drugs was at least $1,000 a month. And these are high-end MIBs and MABs, I call them, and they're not cheap, and they're putting a significant strain on our system. And when you're told Skyrizi is the only way to treat the problem of the day, I think has a bigger effect on our health system than a lot of other things. But thank you for your commentary.
And that A01C stuff can make you dance really nice too.
I know, LP1s, yeah. Any other questions from the committee? Thank you very much.
Many thanks.
Aubrey Friedman, and that's the last person I have signed up to speak. Just need my insurance covers that I can finally dance, right? Yeah. Thank you, Aubrey.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, Aubrey Friedman, I live in Bridgewater. I speak in support of this bill. This is simply a disclosure bill to the patient. So if the doctor is not doing anything weird or unethical that he shouldn't be doing or be under undue influence, then what is the problem? I think this disclosure is a good thing. So it's been talked about, you can't do kickbacks and stuff. Maybe I don't know, are doctors getting compensated extra? I mean, this is a good issue to know about, because they might be, actually, if they are, they probably are. They're not unbiased on a treatment or a drug. So I think it would make a difference. And if they are getting extra compensation in some way, then it should be disclosed. It's a simple disclosure. So I think it is a good idea. Is there anything more important, think about it, for a patient is informed consent. And if your doctor is recommending a treatment or a drug, and he's not really unbiased because maybe he is getting some compensation, you should know about that. I think that's important. So it's clearly a conflict of interest if he is getting the compensation. If he's not getting it, then there's nothing special to disclose. And lastly, while I do support the bill, I'm kind of wondering why $5,000, it's excessive. That to me is a lot. You can buy a lot of undue influence with $5,000. I think it should be a lot less. I think it should be like close to zero. So, I mean, you could definitely be influenced. So I would change that. I think it should be, I mean, if they give you a couple, if it's a drug representative from the manufacturer and they give you a couple pens or a notepad or something, that's fine. But $5,000 worth of compensation can buy a lot of influence. So that's my only objection, but I support the bill. I think it's a good idea. Transparency, what's wrong with that? And disclosure. Those are the reasons I support the bill.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is anyone else that would like to speak on House Bill 1335? I'm going to close the hearing. Yes, and we're out before noon. All right, we'll see you all tomorrow. The meeting of the day, business of the day being